Ugh, it's so cold outside. All I want to do is curl up under my covers and read a good book, or maybe watch some Netflix. But it looks like I'll be pulling an all nighter today thanks to a chem project that I may have procrastinated on. I know I suck. Anyway, let me get ready with the most important ingredient to a successful all nighter. Introducing the elixir of all nighters coffee. Alright, now that I have that ready, let's just get down to my project. I present to you the chemistry of coffee, which is also this thing. Starting off, let's look at everything in coffee, whether it be the taste, color, smell, texture, effect, or composition. Everything relates to chemistry. But where does coffee come from, and how does it reach you? Whether you like the dark roast or the light roast, the espresso or the cappuccino, it all starts right here. Coffee has chemistry at every stage, but before we get into detail, let's take a look at how coffee is produced. The first stage is harvesting, where coffee cherries are harvested from coffea plants. Yes, that does make coffee a fruit. Next comes the drying stage, where the outer layer of a cherry is removed in a fermentation process or drying. This leaves the part of the cherry that you do consume, the seed or the green bean. Next is the roasting stage, where chemical reactions such as the Maillard reaction and caramelization happen. This is also where you get the custom-made taste of your coffee. After that comes the grinding, where when exposed to the air, more chemical reactions can take place. Lastly is the brewing, where every brew concocted has a different chemical composition, made to your liking. So let's start from the very beginning. There are a whole lot of chemical processes that happen at the plant level of the coffee bean, and I could practically talk about them for hours and make a whole new video. But for the sake of this one, let's take a look at one of the important ones, photosynthesis, a chemical process whereby sunlight is transformed by the plant into glucose. Glucose is a carbohydrate that plants use for energy. During photosynthesis, the chlorophyll converts photons from the sunlight, water and carbon dioxide to glucose and oxygen. Then comes the drying. Like I said before, the outer layer of a cherry is removed during the drying process. There are several ways that coffee beans are dried. One of the most popular ways is sun drying, where the beans are washed and dried out in the sun. However, the second way is through fermentation. This is when a combination of yeast, bacteria, and other microorganisms cause a substance to break down into simpler substances. To put it simply, fermentation is a natural change that happens when you put sugar and water together, and coffee cherries are full of both. And so, just after the cherries are picked, the fermentation process will start. Next is arguably the most important part of the whole coffee making process, roasting. And the reason why it is so crucial to the drink itself is because it is where the Maillard reaction happens. Whatever coffee you like to drink, whether it be the dark roast, cinnamon, continental, everything comes back to the Maillard reaction. And here's why. Named after Louis Camille Maillard, a French doctor who first described it in 1910, the Maillard reaction is crucial to creating the characteristic flavor, aroma, and the brown color of roasted coffee. During the roasting process, coffee bean components undergo structural changes, leading to the formation of melanoidins, which are defined as high molecular weight nitrogenous and brown-colored compounds. As coffee brew is one of the main sources of melanoidins in the human diet, their health implications are numerous. In fact, several biological activities such as antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and many others have been attributed to coffee melanoidins. The reaction occurs between an amino acid and a reducing sugar. Let's take a look at how this actually happens. First comes a reducing sugar. This is a sugar that has a free aldehyde or ketone group. These groups contain an oxygen atom with a double bond joining it to a carbon chain, which can easily react with amino acids and many other compounds. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. They have a variety of structures, but they all have an amine group at one end and a carboxyl group at the other. When they react together, the nitrogen in the amino acid bonds to the carbon chain of the sugar, giving off one molecule of water. The resulting molecule is called glycosylamine. But this molecule is not stable. It'll first change its structure in a process called the Amadori rearrangement, and then it will do one of three things. Lose more water molecules to become a caramel-type molecule, break down into short chain molecules, or react again with more amino acids. However, all three products of these reactions can react again with amino acids to form molecules called melanoidins, which are crucial to the characteristic flavors and aromas and brown colors of roasted coffee. The next stage is grinding. Coffee grounds are completely full of various oils, chemical compounds, and acids. These compounds, being referred to as solubles, collectively give coffee its flavor. In the brewing process, they are extracted from the grounds. And that brings us to the last stage, brewing. Whatever you put in your coffee creates a new chemical composition that enhances, or doesn't, the taste of your drink. But first, we need to keep in mind what exactly is in your coffee. If I were to go into detail on every single part of coffee, it would take forever. But let's take a look at some of the really important parts of one of our favorite drinks. First, we have the acids, where we have chlorogenic acid, quinic acid, phosphorus acid, citric acid, and many more, but more on that later. Next, we have carbohydrates, such as sucrose, reducing sugars, polysaccharides, lignin, and pectins. We also have nitrogenases, like proteins, free amino acids, caffeine, trigonelline, and nicotinic acid. On the lipids, we have multiple different coffee oils, triterpene esters, and minerals. And of course, under esters, we have melanoids, which we have talked about in detail earlier. Let's talk about acids. There are 6 main acids present in coffee. The chlorologic acid makes a large majority of coffee and is responsible for some of those fruitier and tastier flavors in the lighter roasts. Next comes quinic acid, which has more of a rich, dark flavor that many dark roast lovers have come to enjoy. It also causes acid reflux for many drinkers. Third is citric acid, which produces the light, fruity flavors in many of today's leading single-origin blends and roasted beans. Next is malic acid, which has a taste specifically resembling many fruits such as plums, pears, and apples. However, it is present in very little quantities. Fifth is phosphoric acid, which is also a sweeter taste, which contrasts the bitter and the tangy. And last is acetic acid, which in small doses can offer a pleasant and piquant flavor. One of the prime constituents of coffee is caffeine, which I'll talk about later in this video. It makes up 2 to 3% of your actual coffee. 3 to 5% are made of tannins, which are a type of plant compound which are well known for their bitter flavors and their ability to easily bind with proteins and minerals. 13% is made of proteins. And lastly, 10 to 15% make up the numerous amount of fixed oils that are present in coffee. The main ingredient in coffee is most definitely caffeine. There are approximately 100 milligrams in 1 cup, and it peaks about 15 to 45 minutes after ingestion. Caffeine works by blocking the action of adenosines, the chemicals in the brain that trigger fatigue. So how exactly does caffeine affect the brain? Well, take a look. Here's the human brain. And here we have a naturally accumulating chemical called adenosine. Adenosine accumulates when you are awake, which means that the more adenosine you have, the more tired you are. Adenosine binds to receptors in the brain to slow down brain activity. But how is this different when caffeine enters the body? The adenosine and caffeine molecular structures are very similar, and the similarity in their molecular structures causes them to have the same interaction with the adenosine receptor sites. Because caffeine is so similar to adenosine, when caffeine enters the bloodstream, it binds with these adenosine receptors instantly. With this, caffeine acts as a stimulant, not allowing drowsiness to take over. However, like all things, there is a flop side to this. On long-term use, the effect of extreme amounts of caffeine causes the brain to make even more receptors. Ultimately, this means that more coffee would be needed in order to get the same effect. This is also the reason why stopping the intake of caffeine on an everyday basis causes withdrawal symptoms. There's actually much debate on the top pros and cons of coffee. With it being such a popular drink, it also has a lot of ongoing experimentation. However, let's take a look at some of the top pros and cons of coffee. that caffeine in coffee helps enhance energy levels. It also provides resistance to cancers such as skin, breast, colon, liver, and many others, and to many diseases as well, such as Parkinson's, diabetes, liver disease, heart disease, and others. On the flip side, caffeine makes it hard for you to fall asleep, messing up your sleep pattern. In addition, it has a couple of related risks such as insomnia, nervousness, and anxiety, as it is a stimulant. And excessive amounts of coffee can cause addiction and overconsumption, which would cause extreme withdrawal symptoms. Now that the effect of my coffee has worn out, I'm gonna head to bed. Good night.